August 7th, 1899, Volume 2, About Our Nothingness. This morning, my lovable Jesus would not come. After much waiting and waiting, finally he came. My confusion and annihilation was such that I was unable to tell him anything. Jesus told me, "The more you annihilate yourself and come to know your nothingness, the more my humanity, unleashing rays of light, will communicate my virtues to you." I said to him, "Lord, I am so bad and ugly as to be horrifying to myself. What must I be before you?" And Jesus, "If you are ugly, I can make you beautiful." And in the act of saying this, he sent a light from himself to my soul, and it seemed that he would communicate his beauty to it. Then, embracing me, he began to say, "How beautiful you are, but beautiful of my own beauty. This is why I am drawn to love you." Who can say how confused I remained, more than ever? But may everything be for his glory. August 7th, 1904, Volume 6. The first to persecute the Church will be the religious. As I was in my usual state, I found myself surrounded by angels and saints who said to me, "It is necessary that you suffer more for the imminent things that are about to happen against the Church, for if they do not come about imminently, time will make them happen in a milder way and with lesser offense to God." And I said, "Is suffering perhaps in my power? If the Lord gives it to me, I will gladly suffer." Meanwhile they took me and brought me before the throne of our Lord, and they prayed together that he would make me suffer. And blessed Jesus, coming toward us in the form of the crucified, shared his pains with me, not only once, but I spent almost all morning amid continuous renewals of the crucifixion. Afterwards he said to me, "My daughter, sufferings divert my just indignation, and the light of grace is renewed in the human minds." Ah, daughter, do you think that it will be the secular who will be the first to persecute my church? Ah, no, it will be the religious, the very leaders who, pretending now to be sons, shepherds, while in reality they are poisonous snakes that poison themselves and others, will begin among themselves to lacerate this good mother, and then the secular will follow. Then, as obedience called me, the Lord withdrew, but all embittered. August 7th, 1918, Volume 12, The Consummation of Jesus in the Soul. I was lamenting to Jesus about his privation, and I said to myself, "Everything is over. What bitter days! My Jesus has eclipsed himself. He has withdrawn from me. How can I continue to live?" As I was saying this and other nonsense, my always lovable Jesus, through an intellectual light which came to me from him, told me, "My daughter, my consummation on the cross still continues in souls. When the soul is well disposed and gives me life within herself, I live again in her, as if within my humanity. The flames of my love burn me, and I fidget to prove it to the creatures and say, 'Do you see how much I love you? I am not content with having consumed myself on the cross for love of you. I want to consume myself for love of you in this soul who gave me life within herself.' So I make the soul feel the consummation of my life within her. The soul finds herself as though in a tight corner. She suffers mortal agonies. no longer feeling the life of her Jesus within herself, she feels consumed. Feeling that my life in her, with which she was accustomed to living, is missing, she struggles and trembles, almost like my humanity on the cross when my divinity let it die, withdrawing strength from it. This consummation of the soul is not human, but fully divine, and I feel satisfaction as if another divine life of mine had consumed itself for love of me. In fact, it was not her life that was consumed, but mine, which she can no longer feel or see, and it seems to her that I have died for her. And I renew the effects of my consummation for creatures, while I redouble grace and glory to this soul. I feel the sweet enchantment, the attractions of my humanity, which allowed me to do whatever I wanted. Therefore, you too, let me do whatever I want within you. Let me be free, and I will carry out my life. Another day I was lamenting again, telling him, "How is it that you left me?" And Jesus, serious and imposing, "Be quiet. Do not speak nonsense. I did not leave you. I am in the depth of your soul. This is why you do not see me. And when you see me, it is because I come to the surface of your soul. Do not get distracted. I want you all intent in me, so that I may keep you for the good of all." August 7th, 1929, Volume 26. The principal means in order to make the divine will reign. The knowledges. Difference between one who lives in the divine will and one who lives in the human will. I was continuing my acts in the divine volition, and I thought to myself, how can the divine will come to reign? What will be the means, the helps, the graces, in order to dispose the creatures to let themselves be dominated by it? And my always beloved Jesus, moving in my interior, all goodness and tenderness, told me, "My daughter, the principal means in order to make my divine fiat reign upon earth are the knowledges about it. The knowledges will form the ways, will dispose the earth to become its kingdom. They will form the cities, will act as telegraphs, as telephone, as postal service, as trumpeters, in order to communicate city to city, creature to creature, nation to nation, the news, the important knowledges about my divine will. And the knowledges about it will cast into the hearts the hope, the desire to receive a good so great. From here one cannot escape. A good cannot be wanted nor received if it is not known, and if it were received without knowing it, it is as if it were not received. Therefore the foundations, the hope, the certainty of the kingdom of my divine will be formed by the knowledges about it. This is why I have told so many of them, because they will be the riches, the nourishment, and the new suns, the new heavens, that the peoples of the kingdom of my volition will possess. Now, when the knowledges about my fiat will make their way, disposing those who will have the good of knowing them, my more than paternal goodness, in order to show the excess of my love, will place my very humanity, all the good I did, in each creature, at her disposal, in a way that they will feel such strength and grace as to let themselves be dominated by my divine will. And my humanity will be in the midst of the children of my kingdom, like heart in their midst, for the decorum and the honor of my fiat, and as antidote, grace and defense from all the evils that the human will has produced. The ardor of my love that wants it to reign is such and so great that I will perform such excesses of love as to win the most rebellious wills. On hearing this, I remained surprised, and as if I wanted to cast a doubt on what Jesus had told me. And he, resuming his speaking, added, "My daughter, why do you doubt about it? Am I perhaps not master to do what I want, and to give myself as I please to give myself? Is my humanity perhaps not the firstborn brother who possessed the kingdom of my divine will? And as the first brother, I have the right to communicate the right to possess it to the other brothers, placing my very self at their disposal in order to give them a good so great. Am I not the head of the whole human family, who can make the virtue of the head flow in their members, and make the vital act of my divine will descend into the members? And besides, is it perhaps not my humanity that dwells in you continuously, that gives you such strength and grace for wanting to live only of my will, and makes you feel such peace and happiness as to eclipse your human will, in a way that it itself feels happy to live as though without life under the empire of my divine will? Therefore what I need is that they know the knowledges about my fiat. The rest will come by itself." After this I continued in my abandonment in the divine fiat. It seemed to me that in it there are no stops. There is always something to do, but a doing that does not tire. On the contrary, it fortifies. It makes one happy and rejoice in one's long journey. But while I was thinking about this, my highest good, Jesus, added, "My daughter, one who lives in my divine volition always walks, because she has the round of eternity at her disposal that never ends. And by never stopping, she always takes. And if she stopped, one little stop, one step less, would cost her the loss of a divine step and happiness. In fact, my fiat is an act ever new of happiness, of grace, and of indescribable and unreachable beauty. And if the soul walks, she takes, while if she stops, she does not take, because not having followed step by step the path of my divine volition, she has known nothing of the happiness and beauty that my will has issued in that step. And who can tell you the great difference between one who lives in my divine will and one who lives in the human will? One who lives in the human will stops constantly. Her round is so short that if she wants to extend her step, she finds no place on which to put her foot. At each step she takes, she gets now a displeasure, now a disillusion, and she feels one more weakness that drags her even to sin. Oh, how brief is the circle of the human will, full of miseries, of precipices, and of bitternesses. Yet they love so much to live in its circle. What madness, what foolishness to be deplored. August 7th, 1932, Volume 31. How the light of the divine will makes one lose the life of all other things. It gives divine freshness, and one who lives in it is confirmed in good and acquires the right of citizen of heaven. I am in the arms of the divine will, although under the press of the privations of my very sweet Jesus. Without him, the hours are centuries, the days are unending, and oh, how I mourn for his sweet and lovable presence, and I feel all the hardness of my long exile. But while I moan and yearn, the divine fiat makes its light flow over my pain, and mitigating it, makes me flow in the eternal waves of its acts, in order to unite mine to its, and make of them one alone. It seems to me that it gives me no time to grieve over being deprived of he who so much loves me and one whom I love. And its light imposes itself over everything. It eclipses and absorbs everything. It wants everything for itself, nor does it permit the loss of time, even over the holiest things, that is, the privation of Jesus. But while I swam in the sea of sorrow, my dear life, hardly as lightning that flees, visiting my little soul, told me, "Good daughter, courage. Let yourself be guided by the light of my divine will, that will know how to convert sufferings, pains, my very privations, into perennial peace and into divine conquests. The nature of its light is eclipsing, corroborating, strengthening. And where its light reaches, sorrows lose strength and life, and change into conquests and joys, because the strength of its light surpasses everything. And where it takes its place, all other things lose life. And if before the light of my divine will they feel other effects and desires, it means that the fullness of its light is not full in the soul, nor does it reign in her in an absolute way. Its reign is absolute reign, not conditional. Therefore it has the supreme right of absorbing everything, of making all other things lose life, and of converting everything into divine will. You must know that every time the creature does her acts in my will, a beneficial dew reigns over her that conserves the divine freshness and gives her opium for all that does not pertain to it. And oh, how beautiful it is to see her always fresh in her acts, fresh in her love, in her sorrow, awaiting in act to receive its due, to receive the opium, to convert it into sweet conquest of divine volition. Freshness renders her lovable, attractive, as a person and as an object. Old things please no one, and therefore I love so much one who lives in my divine will, because I feel in her our divine freshness, our charming fragrances. In sum, she gives of our things, and your Jesus encloses in my divine heart this beloved creature, and I form her, raising her completely in my will. So this noble flock of children of my volition will be formed in my most holy heart, as so many little queens, as daughters of the great King. So continuing my state of oppression, because of the privations of my sweet Jesus, I thought to myself, and yet, even though I am deprived of he who is more than my own life to me, still I feel a profound peace, nor do I fear anything, nor have I any fear if it is through my fault that the celestial Jesus deprives me of himself, nor have I any fear that he might be able to lose me. I feel nothing else in my little soul than a placid sea, that although it murmurs, yet its murmur is nothing other than I love you. And this little I love you of mine asks you nothing other than that the kingdom of your will come on earth, and without ever ceasing to murmur, I make my little waves again and again, in order to free myself from my exile, and take heaven by storm, so as to enclose myself in my celestial fatherland. But what? In vain. My waves fall into my sea, and I placidly continue to call out, I love you, I love you, and I pledge heaven and earth to ask you for your fiat. But while my mind blundered, my highest good Jesus, clasping me in his arms, all tenderness told me, my newborn of my will, it seems you go searching how to disturb yourself, but I do not want it. I do not want tempests in the sea of your soul, but perennial peace. The tempests, that is, the fears, the frights, the doubts, they are tempests, would impede in you the continuous murmur of your placid I love you, that must run and murmur always in order to conquer your Creator, so that he send his will to descend on earth, in order to let it reign. Now you must know that for one who lets herself be dominated by my will and lives in it, evils lose life. The fears of offending me, the frights, the disturbances, lose the seed in order to be born. The soul and the body remain confirmed in good. She finds herself in the conditions of the blessed. Evil has no more life for them. because in those celestial regions, in my will, evil absolutely cannot enter. Therefore, one who lives in it can be called and acquires the right of citizen of heaven. And if she finds herself on earth, where my divine will keeps her for its great designs and for the good of poor humanity, it is as a citizen away from the celestial fatherland. But despite the fact that she is on earth, she does not lose the rights of being a citizen of heaven or of living with the same properties of the celestial fatherland. And although she feels herself as away, yet by right she must possess heaven in her soul in order to live not of earth, but of heaven. To live in my will calls heaven to earth, and its light writes on her forehead with indelible letters, perennial love, imperturbable peace, confirmation of all goods, daughter of the Supreme Being. Therefore, always in my will do I want you, so that you can enjoy the properties of your celestial fatherland that are continuous love, highest peace, and divine will as life of all the blessed. End of August 7th. Fiat.